Well, it's Saturday the 28th of May. This is episode 2221 of 301 Permanently Moved.online, a personal podcast 301 seconds in length, written, recorded, and edited by me, at the JMO. Because I make a podcast, I've become that guy, pulling my phone out and recording whenever anyone around me is telling a good story. So today's episode is a true story, recorded very late into the evening in a very noisy pub, just after my bandmate started telling us about what happened to him at work one time. This episode has several trigger warnings, including death, corpses, and maggots. We join the story as he explains his day-to-day work as an acoustic consultant.
The grunt work we do is sound insulation testing, which is like, long story short, turn it through the flat, put the loudspeaker and blast white noise at 100 decibels, very, very loud, and measure to see how much sound's going through the wall. There's no background to the story, so probably a year or so before I'd been to this property, there's a little, HMO, 3 tiny little rooms. They've been converted on the cheap. They needed to get their building regulations signed off. It's a one-room flat, probably 10 foot from the front door. There's a bed, and there's a hot plate on the sides, and there's vodka, and empty vodka bottles, 20 or 30 probably empty cheap vodka bottles just arranged around the room. Go to the flat, set up the speaker. I'm like, oh shit, there's a guy asleep in the bed. I'm like, oh, excuse me, I'm here to do a sound test, and he's like, yeah, it's fine, don't worry about it. So I put a noise source in this guy's flat. And I'm like, it's going to be really loud. You might want to step outside. And he's like, no, don't worry about it. I used to be in the army, so, I don't hear anything anymore anyway. And he just stayed in his bed, pulled the covers over. I'm like, okay, well, it's up to you. Turn the speaker up, 100 decibels, do a quick sound test, leave the site, client gets the report. About a year later, we get called back to go to the same site again because the commercial property on the ground floor is being converted into a flat. So they need to do a sound test of the floor from the flat above, where this guy was living, down to what was below, in order to get the building control sign-off from the local authority. So I turn up at this place, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember this place. And I meet the estate agent. The estate agent's got the key, because she's like, yeah, they know it's happening, they're expecting us. So it's me and this young woman from the estate agent, and she's like, yeah, I spoke to the guy last week, and he knows it's happening, so don't worry about it, it's all good. So I turn up with all the equipment, ready to move the speaker into the flat, and we're knocking on the door, no response. So she's like, okay, he must be out. We let ourselves in, door swings open, we poke our heads around, and the thing that hit us first was the smell. There was this intense, almost visible fog of I can only describe it as the smell of death, but it was just, you knew what was going on. And lo and behold, you walk in, and there's the bed, and there is a body lying in it, and you can just tell, just by looking at it, that he's been dead for a while. It was almost mummified, I would say. It was this woman was with me and stuff, and she was like, go and check if he's all right. And I was like, he's not all right. I don't need to tell this guy's pulse, man. This guy's dead. Yeah. So we were like, what the fuck do we do? I was like, well, I suppose we phone the emergency services. So we phoned 999, and they're like, what service you got? I was like, ambulance, I guess, and/or police, because we've just found a dead body. And they're like, okay, we'll send a paramedic round. In the meantime, we'll put you through to the medical people. So they put me through to a fucking 111 operative, and they're like, have you checked his pulse? Can you put a mirror in front of his mouth to see if he's breathing? And I was like, no, we haven't done that because we don't fucking need to, because the guy's fucking dead. So about 20 minutes later, paramedic turns up, and he's like, okay, so what's going on here? I'm like, there's a dead guy in there. He's like, okay, I'll go and have a look. And he's like, yeah, he's dead. There are maggots in his eyes. Because the room flat, the windows were shut, the heating was still on. So this fucking guy had clearly been dead for about a week with the heating on. So he was in a pretty reasonable state of decomposition, and this poor paramedic had to basically bag him up. But yeah, so we waited around for a bit, and a police officer turned up, and he was like, okay, what's going on here, blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, we found this guy dead. It wasn't us that done it. He's clearly been there for a while. He was like, why are you here? I was like, well, I'm an acoustic consultant. I'm going to do a sound insulation test of the floor. He's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but okay. They made us both to give a statement, and after a little while, they were just like, okay, you can fuck off home, we don't need anything from you. And I was like, okay, you got my number, call me if you need to. And they never did call me back, so I assume they just dealt with it. But yeah, I kind of got back in the car, drove back to the fucking office, and I was just like, yeah, so that's happened, that was weird. And just the thought of this guy dying and no one fucking noticing was the most unfair thing about the whole thing, really. Really horrible.